He's back in the spotlight, but this time it's allegations of cybercrime. Reports of hacking and blackmail by the Saudi Crown Prince come as questions linger about his involvement in state-sponsored murder. I'm Imran Garda, and today's newsmaker is Mohammed bin Salman. In an age where protecting privacy and personal data is of epic importance, it's strange to think that even one of the world's richest men is vulnerable, which is why the story of a future king targeting a kingpin of industry is making headlines. And while the details sound a bit tabloidy, malicious spyware, an extramarital affair, and leaked nude photos, the United Nations is calling it an attempt to influence, if not silence, Jeff Bezos, and by default, the Washington Post, for its critical coverage of Saudi Arabia and its de facto ruler. If the allegations are true, it illustrates not just a disregard for common decency, but also for US law. The UN says Washington needs to get involved, saying this is relevant to the ongoing question about the Crown Prince's involvement in the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. But is the political will there? Adam Pletz has more on why the Trump administration might still be reluctant to do much about it.
The UN is demanding an investigation into allegations that the Saudi Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, is responsible for hacking billionaire Jeff Bezos' phone. Bezos is one of the world's richest men and owns the Washington Post, where murdered Saudi dissident journalist Jamal Khashoggi worked. He was killed in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul in 2018.
The story places yet again the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia at the heart of a campaign that resulted into the killing of Jamal Khashoggi.
5 government employees were sentenced to death in a Saudi court for Khashoggi's murder. Riyadh denies the Crown Prince was involved in either Khashoggi's killing or the hacking of Bezos' phone.
Well, I think absurd is exactly the right word. The idea that the Crown Prince would hack Jeff Bezos' phone is absolutely silly. And my understanding of the UN report, it's not actually a report, it's a statement based on a report by a private company that has not been vetted by any independent agency.
The Trump administration has stood by bin Salman through all accusations of wrongdoing, but the Republican Party has been split in its reaction to the Crown Prince's authoritarian leanings.
The leadership coming from MBS is not what I envisioned. Imprisoning the Lebanese prime minister, taking all of your critics and throwing them in prison, the brutal murder of Mr. Khashoggi in Turkey, violating every norm of international behavior, I have concluded that the relationship between Saudi Arabia and the United States cannot move forward until MBS has been dealt with.
Democrats and some Republicans have also questioned whether the US should continue arms sales to Saudi Arabia, given the war it's waging in Yemen. At home, the Crown Prince's supporters say he's bringing much-needed social reform to a deeply conservative society, albeit doing so with an iron fist. But might bin Salman's autocratic rule ultimately spoil his relationship with the US? And if the Crown Prince is linked to the hacking of Bezos' phone, will that be a step too far for Washington? Adam Pletz, The Newsmakers.
Well, to discuss that and more, let's go to our guests. Here with me in the studio is Mohamed al Qubaiban. He is a retired RSAF Major General and Gulf Affairs expert. Welcome. Charles Dunne joins us from Washington, D.C. He's a non-resident scholar at the Middle East Institute. Also in Washington, D.C. is Ben Freeman, Director of the Foreign Influence Transparency Initiative at the Center for International Policy. Gentlemen, good to have you all on the program. Mohamed al Qubaiban, let's start with you. So the UN is saying something's going on here, this is serious, and to quote Agnes Callamard, in an effort to influence, if not silence, the Washington Post's reporting on Saudi Arabia, this was done, suggesting it came from the very top of the Saudi government. They're saying now Washington should investigate. Do you support that?
Thank you for having me, and nice to see you again, by the way. Of course, no, sir, I don't support
Why
such a thing.
shouldn't Washington investigate?
Because as the foreign minister said a while ago in the report, this is not silly. I consider it more than silly. True.
So why not
the
investigate
Saudis-
and expose it for being more than silly?
Because this is, first of all, the report where it comes, okay, as a private companies or outside of the government issues. This is number one. Number two, the question is, let's say the question is, why such a thing that the Crown Prince will go and do thing like this? Reason why? As you earlier report talked about, to quiet or to shut up Washington Post people that they don't talk about the Saudis. You knew, Imran, if the Saudis government trying to shut up everybody talking, we will never stop. It is from neighboring country all the way till around the world.
But we have enough evidence that there is an attempt to do that. That's why a journalist went into a consulate and ended up in pieces, right? Many people within the Saudi government were trying to shut him up. Many people in the Saudi government were trying to shut up Iyad al-Baghdadi and others who have been threatened. So we see a pattern here.
No,
you're asking
if you're
it
talking
rhetorically.
about, yes, sir. If you're talking about Khashoggi case, now everybody knew that there is a trial and there is 5 people will be sent to kill or to death, and the investigation is going on and never been stopped.
And of course, still
Yes,
the
sir.
CIA says that they believe that Mohammed bin Salman himself ordered the killing. So it's not as if it's been put to bed that the very top had nothing to do with it, right? There's still a question mark.
No,
over
sir, that's not true. Mohammed bin Salman said he knew that there is a mistake and he is responsible or he's in charge. This mistake should not happen, and everybody will be taking his penalty or the penalty his punishment. Regarding the Bezos mobile, I've heard about this, you knew, last year. And also, I will say something else, that there's his fiancée did this. Why we're not discussing that? There is a problem.
It is very plausible that both could be true at the same time. It's very plausible that both could be true at the same time. That he was hacked by the Saudis, and at the same time, his fiancée gave messages to her brother, who took it to the National Inquiry.
Why we don't go for the other option?
Because we're not a tabloid show. We're talking geopolitics between the US and Saudi Arabia.
Why
we don't do affairs.
Yes, why the Crown Prince goes to such a... I consider it real silly, such a thing like this.
So you feel that it would be impossible, it doesn't make sense for him to do this?
Big time.
Okay.
I don't think so that the Saudis leaders or the Saudi government will reach to such a level like this. You knew we've been attacked in a bigger cases, and we monitor or we manage, especially after the Aramco hit, and we manage not to start accusing people.
I just wonder if
Saudi governments will
certainly. And I just wonder if you're so confident about this, then why not let the Americans investigate and expose it for being silly? But I'm going to come back to you in a moment. I want to go to Ben Freeman for the moment to talk about a Washington investigation. That's what we're hearing from the UN. That's what they want the Americans to do. Now, when I look at this, I think, well, there would probably already be some sort of investigation going on, whether at the NSA or CIA. Technically, they're not going to wait for somebody to give them permission to look into this. But is the UN actually calling for something political to happen? Is the UN getting fed up that they feel that Saudi Arabia is getting away with too much here? So they're actually asking America to do something politically about Mohammed bin Salman. Is that what the UN is asking?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And thank you for having me on. I think what the UN is doing here is they're sending a clear message to one person, and that's Donald Trump. Because what we've seen here in the US is both Democrats and Republicans in Congress, they're united on this issue. They believe that Mohammed bin Salman orchestrated the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, and they believe that the Saudis were very likely involved in this hack of Jeff Bezos. And so what the UN is doing here, I think, is sending a clear message to Donald Trump that he needs to get his act together and actually endorse this investigation and actually get to the bottom of what the Saudis are doing here in the US.
Charles Dunne, is that ever going to happen? We went through the entire situation of Khashoggi and the aftermath, the the horrible truth coming out week after week, month after month, that did not in any way seem to dent the relationship between the United States and Saudi Arabia. Will this make a difference, even if it can be proved that Saudi Arabia hacked the phone of Jeff Bezos?
Right. I doubt very much whether the administration is going to make a big political issue out of this, and certainly not a big diplomatic issue out of this. I think the president has been very clear on his views on the importance of the Saudi relationship and his personal relationship with the Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman. I think there will be some pressure, certainly from Congress, and possibly from other agencies who seem to have an independent mandate to look into this, to kind of get to the bottom of this. And certainly, since it involves an American citizen, the administration should be concerned about the extent to which foreign powers are looking into their personal electronic lives. But I think that the chances that this is going to lead to a major disruption in the administration's relations with Saudi Arabia are minimal at best.
Mohamed al Qubaiban, are you encouraged that Donald Trump doesn't seem to be deterred by this?
This is even should not reach to that type of level. The relation between the two countries, and even with the UN, is bigger than this. We have more problems in the world need to be solved. If United Nations reach that. They're trying to accuse the Saudis by hacking mobiles. They're trying to accuse the Saudis that they did not do a fair trial for Khashoggi's or
why do you think they're trying to accuse you? Who's trying to accuse you?
This is a question, very good question. Why they are doing this with the Saudis? Especially they are trying to, let's say it this way, is they are underestimating that the capability of the Saudis trying to reform itself. Okay, the Saudis now transitions from one direction to the other direction and being open. And what Mohammed bin Salman...
But we haven't really seen much evidence of that. I mean, we've seen a few sports events, a few concerts. We've seen...
Things are coming, Imran, things are coming slowly.
We've seen cosmetic things.
That's
war in Yemen is still raging.
Yes, sir. But
and dissidents are being killed in embassies, in consulates.
Yemen case, I think things going smooth. Things going toward stopping the war.
But
even
isn't
though
that
the
the point?
Still,
outlets such as the Washington Post, thinkers and writers such as the late Jamal Khashoggi, these people are saying, we're sorry, the emperor has no clothes. He talks a good game, Vision 2030, but in reality, things are terrible. And what does the Saudi state do in response to that? It silences them.
But there is some challenges here. Why not they focus also on who's making the instability in the area? Why they are not looking at the radical people are trying to unstable the let's say the Saudis government.
We've got a show coming up later on in this week about Iran and Hezbollah. So if you're trying to throw shade in that direction, we do that. We discuss that in its proper place.
But this is what I'm saying.
But because the Iranians do things to destabilize Saudi, doesn't mean the Saudis don't do anything.
But there is an arms, and we have to stop it. You know, the regime in Iran built this arms since when 2001, building it in Yemen, and they're having it already. But what I'm talking about government.
Okay.
Point of
again, are you using it as a justification?
No, I'm not saying it as a justification. There is a challenges, and the Saudis, I thought they did the important decisions that they have to work to get the area to more stable. And we have the support, by the way, from the US. A while ago, the question you throw to my colleagues there is the Trump and both parties, the democracy people and Republic people, are going to, facing the Saudis, are going to do any type of clashes. I didn't think so. That's right.
You saw that clip of Lindsey Graham, right?
Lindsey Graham.
Right, you saw that.
I saw that.
So we have the majority of Democrats. Okay, yes, you might say it's playing politics because it's anything against Trump. But never mind that, right? We've had a poll from Gallup recently, February 2019, showed that just 4% of Americans have a very favorable view of Saudi Arabia, 25% with a somewhat favorable view. The rest don't have a good view of Saudi Arabia. It's worse than their views of Cuba and Venezuela. A Business Insider poll conducted in September of last year, it asked, is Saudi Arabia an ally? You know what percentage of Americans polled thought Saudi Arabia is an ally? 22%. So you have the vast majority of American citizens who vote in this democracy who don't align with the president on this issue. So we can take them for idiots and say, oh, they're just ignorant or they're bigots or whatever. Or we can say maybe they understand what's going on, but the president and the executive branch is just putting business first and putting their geopolitical interests first because of oil and money. That's it.
I don't think so, sir, because it's an oil and money. I'm always saying this. The relation between two countries, it doesn't have to be or impacted or reflected the population opinion or the population belief. I believe so. I believe one thing is that the two governments, yes, they have to, there is some difficulties sometimes it goes through, especially with the Khashoggi murder. There is some difficulties with the oil prices, but we saw how the Saudis are working very hard to stabilize the oil prices. The American nations, I believe, if you want to make them happy, make the oil prices getting less. Is that
the reason why they have a negative view of Saudi Arabia?
But this is one of the many reasons. Okay. Again, the public. Okay. What I'm saying, the media. Now, I'll say one last more important. The Arab media, they have to stop attacking the Saudis. They have to look at it. Many Arab media, Qatar, sometimes the TRT in your TV here.
But again, if we report that a man went in to get some documents in the consulate in Istanbul and ended up being chopped up, and we report negatively about it.
We admitted it. We admitted it.
The Saudis did not admit it initially. They said, no, we don't know what happened to him. He left. And then the story changed, and it changed, and it changed, and it changed. And then you wonder why the media is skeptical of the Saudi claims. And then you say, oh, no, you report negatively about it.
Sir, 1 year, you and me, 1 year ago, we talked about it, and I told you exactly we have to wait because it's a crime. It should not happen.
Right.
Saudis took the proper action. The Saudis are feeling sorry that it happens. And even the king himself are promised that he will penalty the people being doing
And you feel it's been enough. I want to bring in Ben Freeman. Ben Freeman, Mohamed al Qubaiban, who, and I must credit him again because it's very difficult for us to get Saudi guests on the show, and he always puts himself forward, and I appreciate that, sir. Ben Freeman, he feels that his country is misunderstood. Does he have a point?
I think the problem from an American perspective is that the average American citizen is looking at the totality of what Saudi Arabia does and how Saudi Arabia engages with the U.S. And frankly, what the American public is seeing hasn't been a good picture lately. Before this Jeff Bezos incident happened, it didn't really come out of the blue. We've seen multiple instances where the Saudis have tried to cover up their involvement in the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. We've also seen multiple incidents here within the U.S., a Saudi citizen killing U.S. soldiers at a military base here. We've heard reports here of Saudis committing crimes in the U.S. and then having Saudi officials sweep them out of the country and get them back to Saudi Arabia before they face the criminal justice system here in the U.S. And so basically all of this is sending a message to the average American citizen that the Saudis think they're above the law in the U.S. And so I think there's a very clear and compelling case to the average American citizen that Saudi Arabia, it really isn't our friend. And even if they are our friend, the very least we can do as a good friend is to tell them that they're doing stuff that is incredibly wrong and they need to stop it.
And Charles Dunne, if there is a very clear and compelling case that Saudi Arabia is not the best of friends, in an election year, if a Bernie or a Biden or a Warren puts this issue on the table as a weapon against Trump, would it resonate? Would it actually begin to hang a question mark over the relationship the United States has with Saudi Arabia?
First of all, I mean, I don't think this is going to resonate too much with the American voter in the political situation and the economic situation that we have right now. And, you know, President Trump can obviously point, as he has in the past, to the great economic relationship, the trade relationship that we have with Saudi Arabia in order to kind of deflect that argument. I think it is true that as my colleagues here have said, that there are problems with the perception of Saudi Arabia. Those are not going to go away. I think if you look at the overall polling data, it shows that the problem is not just with Saudi Arabia, but with American views of Islam and Muslim majority countries in general,
that's
and
fair.
to a certain extent with authoritarian countries.
Certainly, certainly. Yes, I did, and it's true. I didn't quote that. I mean, I might have quoted that in a slight vacuum because that is definitely nested within that. But Charles, do you think that with this sort of timeline of events, if we look at Khashoggi and we look at the alleged hacking of Bezos' phone, how many more of these incidents might it take for us to seriously begin questioning the relationship? Or will it never be questioned because the relationship is just that solid because the oil and money mean so much?
Well, I think that there's been a lot of questioning about the nature of our relationship with not only Saudi Arabia, but with the Gulf countries and with the Middle East in general. You see more and more commentary by very senior and serious diplomats coming out saying that the Middle East isn't worth it, right? And so I think that Saudi Arabia is getting caught up in that. I think as long as Saudi Arabia claims it's a good partner of the United States, and the administration validates that, that relationship is going to continue. But certainly there are very serious problems, and you have to ask yourself whether the Saudis are acting as good partners. Not only the Khashoggi murder, the Bezos hacking, their efforts to win influence in places such as Hollywood, Silicon Valley, and so on. And using those efforts to tamp down criticism of the government, these things are all very disturbing. And to me, there's a certain instability, if you will, in the decision-making at the top ranks of the Saudi government, which has made a lot of people in Washington question whether they are, in fact, stable and good allies in the sense that they back up, American initiatives and can be counted on. The entire Yemen intervention, again, is an excellent example of how the relationship is being questioned.
Well, that's a good point. Let me pose that to Mohamed al Qubaiban. Is this government erratic, unstable, scatterbrained? Is it difficult to judge what it's going to be doing next? Or should we trust that there is some method to the quote-unquote madness of Mohammed bin Salman?
Well, I think because of the change massively of these Saudi strategies to deal with the issues in the area, people did not like this. People, they want the Saudi governments just to have a quiet relationship with their neighbors, but I thought that Mohammed bin Salman, really, I admire his policy in the area. I admire the way he
Has
tried.
he made mistakes?
Everybody do mistakes, Imran.
What do you think was his biggest mistake?
No, I'm not talking about mistakes strategic, because he's not the decision maker.
Okay, but
I mean,
you've had time to review his time as Crown Prince. Where do you think he's got it wrong?
I'm not saying there is a 100% perfect person.
I know that.
There must be something wrong, but
but if you can think of one thing, where did he go wrong?
Wallahi, to me, what I look at his strategy in the area required sometimes to show to the people, okay, and our friends and our allied, that's they think now it's by attacking Yemen or attacking the Houthis or by stopping strongly against the Iranian and even some of the other countries, the Western countries, they need the result right now. That's where they think that the change the Saudis are doing, they think this is a mistake. And with the way I look at it, no, it's just a longer strategy. They changed their policies in the area, even dealing with the US people. The Saudis never deal with a person like the commander-in-chief US as Trump as a person. Saudis are dealing with the governments and dealing in a big, broad picture. That's my point. Mistakes, it happens. There is a mistake.
But is there anything that you can think of as a mistake?
Well, there is no particular thing mistakes, but I'm thinking sometimes. Like I'm saying Yemen case. Yemen case at the beginning, I was talking about we have to finish this war.
They were trying to rush it.
No, they were easy with the Yemeni themselves, with the government themselves, that they should play it in you. The war, if it's last longer, it will be against you. Though some people saying that it will help the Saudis to get more weapons and so on. So I look at it, the war in Yemen, it shouldn't stay that long.
Here's what we'll do. We'll have another discussion about the war in Yemen very soon, and we'll invite you back on the program. Gentlemen, I'm annoyed that we've run out of time because there was so much more to discuss with all of you. Mohamed al Qubaiban, Charles Dunne, and Ben Freeman. It's been a pleasure having you all here on the Newsmakers. Thank you very much. And thank you for watching. We will see you next time. Bye-bye.